So I would like to thank Laikyn Meng very much for joining us. She is a member of our Romance Dream Weavers group, and she came to my attention because it seemed like every single month she was promoting a new book that she had out. And I was just amazed at how often she had new novels to put out. So Laikyn is a Japanese American indie author. She has penned over 40 publications and maintains a steady stream of romantic expression involving diverse character representation. She is the author of the noteworthy female empowered series Femme Fatale and the family drama Mum's the Word. Then I believe there's also the 5-star phenomenon National Parks. Her poetry and memoirs have appeared in literary magazines, and Laikyn's unique tone is an iconic symbol for her stories. She is originally from Idaho and resides wherever the road takes her and her 3 children. So it sounds to me, Laikyn, as if you are what we would call a transient, which I think is so funny because I am too. I live in my RV and go where the wind takes me.
Yeah, we went on this long road trip, me and my kids, for like 3 months, and we traveled all across the country. So
yeah, that's exciting. I did a circumnavigation of the United States back in 2020 in the middle of COVID, and nobody got out of their RVs. And so I was very socially deprived during that time. So yeah. You are going to talk to us tonight about speed writing, and I'm so excited about that because I am a slow author. I mean, I pen things very slowly. So tell us, how did you become so prolific in your writing?
Okay. I am kind of nervous to talk about it just because I feel like I guess I am an expert to me personally, but when Paula reached out to me to ask me about it, I just kind of was like, oh no, like it's just how I write, it's nothing big. And she's like, no, it's a big deal. And I was like, I guess. So let me share my screen with you.
Okay.
And then I can I made a PowerPoint because it's easier for me to, I guess, share that way. Let's see. Okay.
Okay, there it is. I see it.
Sorry, what?
Oh, I said I see it.
Okay, good. Okay. So I guess in my head, I never called it speed writing. I always referred to it almost as like 10K a day.
Okay.
I really never focused on that. You already kind of went over my background and everything. I do want to say that I am a single mom. And so when I started doing this and everything, I was working full time and still taking care of like my 3 kids. And so I want to reference that just because you have to kind of learn to put in a lot of words into a short amount of time. And that's how I kind of taught myself to write quicker. Okay, let's see. Okay, so the topics that I'm going to go over in this presentation are writing 1K to 10K a day, the practice that it takes to level up to those kind of levels, and the craft, your focus, and your passion. Those are all really important. It's not just about the word count, but you definitely have to feel inspired. Okay, so I wrote my first book in 2010. I didn't publish it until 2019, 2018. But I can say, and that writing 10K a day is definitely possible. In 2022, I published 21 books. Some of them were novellas and some of them were not. The word range was anywhere from 125,000. I also I did write erotica last year.
Excuse me just a moment, please. Excuse me. Will everybody please mute themselves?
What is it?
Yeah, please mute yourselves. Thank you.
It's the next door doggy.
No, Emily, will you?
My apologies. I somehow unmuted when I hadn't muted originally, I thought. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're good. Okay. So I did have 2 pen names. I write under my name, Laikyn Meng, and then I did write under an erotica, but most of my eroticas are always under 10,000, which I didn't really include into writing over 500,000 words. Last year, my goal was to write 500,000 words, and so I'm glad that I went over it a little bit. I hit that number, 500,000 around June-ish, and then I kind of slowed down. Especially this year, I won't make those numbers at all. I have plans only to publish 4 or 5 books this year. Also, I never plot. I make notes, but I never plot it out. And so we'll go into that a little bit later about how I do that. Okay. So you definitely have to make the time. When I was working like a full-time job after my kids would go to bed until midnight, though that was my crunch time. And throughout the whole day, I was making notes in my phone. I was like writing ideas or dialogue. I never fully write out scenes. I'll just say a few words to kind of give me a reminder of what I wanted to expand on. But those are the times you definitely have to, I guess, force yourself to sit down and write. And it's not going to come easy the first couple of times. It's not going to come and you're going to sit down and write 2,000 words in an hour. Because back when I started writing, I was only doing 500 words an hour, which compared to last year's words was nothing. But you do have to kind of let it interrupt your life, especially with the ideas part. You can set a time to write, but you definitely have to make the notes and come up with your ideas, but let that come like naturally throughout the day. Okay, let's see. So I don't know a lot of whoever's watching what your background is, but you do have to be patient, just like when you're starting to write and learning how to do that. You're not going to know everything on the first day. You aren't going to be an overnight success. Writing a lot of words in a day or in a short amount of time, that is something you're going to build up to. And it's kind of like working out. You can't just run a marathon. So just something to be remember. And I always am kind of hard on myself too. And so just remember to be kind, that you'll get it. Okay, so for practicing techniques, this is what I do. So I longhand a lot of my notes and a lot of my passages when I write still. And so I will keep a notepad and pen next to me, and I'll set a timer for 30 minutes, or I'll just look down at my computer every 30 minutes, and I'll just keep track of the word count. Something that kind of is difficult is frustrating is if you keep on looking at your word count as you write instead of your time, then it kind of is defeating. But if you keep track of your time versus the word count, but only at the 30-minute intervals, then it kind of helps you to, okay, I have this amount of time to write this many words. But like I said, you can do that for an hour if it's easier for you. And if you get into a flow, definitely don't stop. But if you're just starting out, I would say to see where you're at and where you want to be, you do want to set those small intervals just to see how well you can build up the word count.
Recording in progress.
Another thing that I never do is you can't stop to edit. You can't really stop to, I guess, think about the structure of your sentences, grammar. periods, commas, you definitely have to let it flow and let it go. If you typed out the wrong character name, you can go back and fix it later on your break, but you definitely just have to keep typing and keep it a slow and swift move. So I put up there that you write every day. I definitely don't write every day. I try to write when I'm inspired, but if you are trying to gain momentum with your word increase, then sitting down and just writing for an hour, it definitely is going to build your tolerance, and it's going to teach your brain to come up with more ideas the faster you go. Oh.
So I'd like to ask a question at this
Yeah.
point, if I could. Okay, okay, I heard that you say that you will handwrite a lot of the notes that you have as the thoughts come to you, but then I also heard that you were typing when you're writing. And I very definitely am a longhand writer. I write everything out longhand and then I transcribe it. And I've heard there's pros and cons on that. It seems like for me, and maybe this is something I need to practice and work on, but it just seems like for me that the minute I sit down to a typewriter, if I haven't already written things out, then my mind just goes blank. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. I have that same problem too, and I don't know if it's the act of like holding like a pen or a pencil and like writing it out, because I definitely feel more inspired when I do that, writing it longhand. When I was saying that I sit down and type like out my notes, it's just like I'll just like a notes app on my phone. Like I'm just typing like, oh, a scene, like I want there to be a scene in Hawaii, or I want them to say this. And then I kind of expand on that in a written form, so I can just kind of let my creativity take over, if that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. As I said, I started writing seriously in 2020. After I published my first book, it was a 4-book series. I always tell myself, I'm just going to write one more book. I'm just going to write one more book. And like, I just kind of want it out of my system, just one more. And then, but as many of you know, being a writer and everything, it just kind of doesn't go away. So when I started saying, okay, well, I want to pursue this, I was only averaging 500 words an hour. And I would say that was like at my best during that time. Most of the time it was only 200 to 300. I really wasn't getting anywhere and I wasn't gaining a lot of momentum. But now I average 1,000 words every 30 minutes. Sometimes I can do more, but it's usually around that. So in that time, I have built up 4 times, which is weird to say. Sorry, I don't usually like talking about myself, and so it's just weird to put it on display. But okay. So one of the ways with writing, and I guess letting your muse take over, you're gonna have to kind of take the back seat and let your mind and your creativity take the wheel when it comes to writing. And I promise you, a lot of the beautiful things and kind of the shocking or surprising things you're gonna write is gonna come when that you're not fully kind of, this is the word. I mean, obviously you're conscious, but like when your subconscious kind of slides through and allows you to write. Let go of control, start out slow and gain traction. every time I sit down, my first hour will really be slow. Usually in that, I'll probably get 1,000 words. But as I get more into the story or a scene, into the book, then it's just going to continue to pick up speed. You need to let the story tell itself. So I know a lot of people that will question, like, oh, I don't want to write that. That seems a little iffy, or that's kind of too much for me. The thing is, you need to push your boundaries as a writer. And even if you're trying to write quicker, you need to always be stretching yourself as far as what your story can say about you as the author and what your brand is. And so I always, anytime I'm like, oh, I don't know if I should make that happen or if my character should say that, I always leave that in there. And most of the time the readers will come back and say that that was the most important part to them. So allow your story to flow and don't stop yourself from writing, and embrace really what kind of comes up and what happens in your story naturally. Nope, hold on. Oh. No, okay, here we go. Sorry, I made this a PowerPoint the other day. Okay. So as I said before, when you step, or I guess when you sit down to write, because I guess maybe people stand, but when you enter your writing arena, you really have to enter it without any judgments. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to write 4,000 words. And even if you don't make that, you can't come to your next writing session with that setback. You definitely have to come every time with a clean slate. Don't worry about what happened last time, even if it's your hour too. Like, oh, I didn't make my word count that hour. Okay. Every 30 minutes, you can break up your own time, but you definitely just, it's okay. Just keep on going and keep on moving. It's important just to have the story be told. It doesn't matter much about the word count, but you definitely have to come to it without any judgments or what's the word? I don't even know the word. Sorry. I will think of it in a second. But preconception. Yeah. No, I don't know if that's it. Sorry, I'm nervous. This is going well. Yeah, preception or assumptions or anything. So don't hold back when writing. Let everything that comes flow onto your page, anything at all. Just let it be on there. My writing style is more poetic, and a lot of readers don't really attach to that. And a lot of people, I'll get a lot of comments in reviews that say English probably isn't her first language, which I was born in Idaho, so I mean, it is, but I can understand that they probably think I just say things weird because of the style and everything I write in, but definitely just let your voice flow and just let it go. That's like my biggest thing is it doesn't matter what all the readers say, it's just matter what your readers say. And if they love it, then they love it. So don't judge your thoughts or your writing as you create your story. If you write a too spicy scene, then fantastic, keep it for now. You can edit it out later, but just write it down and then move on. Your plot took a crazy turn and something bad happened. The readers will never see the twist coming, but it also is surprising for you also. So then that can be a great thing, because if it surprises the author, if it moves the author, then you know you're on the right track. This is my favorite one, because this is the one way that like all the readers really just don't like, is if you kill off a beloved character. And so I'm sure I fully support authors doing that, but I know readers will not like it at all. But I think that for a lot of the time, if you are stuck in your plot and you need something dramatic to happen, or if you need something to move along and you're just kind of there, you can always throw in a twist. You can always come up with something that connects the story to catapult it. So just remember, you are playing creator right now. So anything goes if you want it to. Okay. Let's see. Last year, I was coasting pretty well. And I would say halfway through, I would say by July, I kind of hit turbulence with burnout. In that first 6 months, I probably published around 15 to 18 books. So I want to mention this because burnout is a real thing, especially if you are going to speed write, if you are going to aim to have 10K a day, or if you plan on having 20K a day. If you're still feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or uninspired, you definitely need to take a break. I learned last year that like my best breaks are 2 weeks, and that's 2 weeks to a month. But after a month, I will feel really uninspired and I can't get back into the groove of writing. But there are lots of things you can do. Go for a walk. You can write a completely different genre, a different story. You can change writing environments. I know people write in coffee shops, in the school bus line, not school bus line, but school pickup line. There's all these different areas that kind of change and shift your perspective of writing, and it'll give you more ideas too, which I think that's kind of what you're aiming for too if you are feeling burnt out. You can always listen to new music. I love to listen to podcasts. I listen to this podcast about authors that I read a lot. And so they kind of share what they do to feel inspired in their journeys and everything like that. So that kind of gives me insight, is something I want to aim to be. And it just kind of helps to say, oh, okay, so every writer feels burnout. It's not just me. So that's also nice to know that you're not alone in that struggle of creativity all the time. You can escape, go on an adventure. Me and my kids, if I ever have bad days, I will take them and I'll say, let's go on an adventure. And they think it's fun. For me, I'm like, okay, well, I'm trying to cruise out of this bad mood. And so we'll go climb a mountain, we'll go for a hike, we'll go do something adventurous. And it's just really to get out of that mind space. Another thing that I have a hard time doing is learning to fight with my muse and learning when to say, no, this is the time to write, or learning to accept that, okay, I'm not inspired right now, and that's okay. I published my last book in January, and so I haven't written anything since then. And now I'm getting in the stages to write another book, which I'm going to publish next month, but I haven't felt inspired to write since January. And that scared me because, so for 2 months, I was nervous that my creativity wasn't come back. And sometimes I get worried that like my inspiration or my words won't flow as good as they usually do if I don't practice it all the time. But luckily I am getting back into that groove. So it's nice. So take a break as long as you need to, but just remember to come back to it, especially if it's something you love and you have a unique voice, you have a unique perspective. Everyone needs to hear like that specific story from you. Mental health is a big one too, I think. Yes, we were talking about. Okay. So take time for yourself, like we talked about on the last slide, as a being and not just as an author. I know it's hard for me and for a lot of people that are parents when you have to kind of divide up time, even if it's like an hour, just to have that solace. A lot of the time I right before bed when my kids go to bed, then I try to read a book. I try to write a poem, or I'll try to journal. I try to do those things every day just to know that I'm still connected to serving that outlet to myself, and where I'm feeling like I'm acknowledging what I'm hearing and what's going on. And so I definitely hope that a lot of you don't have that burnout that can go on for months or if not years, but you definitely need to take yourself aside and really concentrate and listen to what's going on inside. I also meditate, but I'm not like super good at it, but I still try every night. And that definitely kind of puts my mind at ease, and it concentrates me the next day to have a better flow of words. I have a busy mind most of the time, and so I'm not very good at saying things out loud, but I can write it down pretty well. But most of the time, if I meditate, then I kind of have a clear understanding of what I need to say, and it comes with ease. So, okay, let's see. All right. So I love the written word, obviously, but I really love hearing about authors and what kind of authors they are. I love hearing their stories. I love reading their books, but I definitely love hearing about them, because I feel like the person behind the book is what makes the book so impactful. It makes those scenes even more intense. It makes the characters a lot more realistic. They come alive for me. So in your craft, and a lot of the time, you're going to realize that if you want to write 10K, then you have to hone in on these specific questions. What kind of author are you? What are your genres and tropes and themes? What messages and storylines do you always incorporate into your work? What can your readers count on? How can you deliver value? Okay, so you can either make a list. I usually make a list. I like writing things out and I like lists. So make a list of what your author brand and writing style is. If you want to go outside the box and your list, then do so. This is just like a formality or a guideline. Like, hey, for me, I usually like second chance romance or small town romance. There's just small guidelines. My favorite thing to do is take certain tropes and then twist them around and shift it into something that I feel like I haven't seen, but I'm sure it's out there also. But you got to take it and make it your own style. Okay. Well, okay. So I write a lot of multicultural characters just because I am a Japanese and American. My dad is from Idaho and my mom is from Japan. And so I feel like I tell a different kind of story because I can give that background of perspective of kind of interracial and mixed characters and their struggles. I also write characters with the LGBTQ representation. I feel that like that's important, especially what's going on with the world right now too. One of my themes and my tagline as an author is intimate, edgy, and multicultural. So angsty romance, every book I write has authentic emotions, but is very emotional. I call them heartbreak romances. In the book itself, most of the time my characters will always get their heart broken, and then they will always go on a self-discovery and self-awareness journey. The characters are going to be so broken, but then they are going to go through a lot of different situations where they're going to learn to accept and love themselves. And then I have a ending that usually is always kind of a hopeful redemption, where a lot of bad things happen, but it turns out to be redeemable. So those are my basic ones that I use for me. But like I said, you can pick whatever favorites that you do or whatever themes you have going on. But these are my main ones that I always include. Self-discovery is a big one for me. I feel like me as an individual, that's what I want to read in characters too. Like, yeah, yes, I love romance, but I also want to see that characters can be independent and they can grow on their own. Okay, so I write mainly romance. I have written nonfiction, mostly memoirs and poetry, but my main focus is romance, which is weird because when I was starting to get into writing and one of my favorite genres to read were fantasy, and yeah, I don't read that or write that at all. So, but in my romance, so my big one that I love to write is second chance romances. So you can take the tropes, like I was saying before, you can take the tropes and you can just twist them around. I recently wrote a sports romance, and there's that trope of grumpy sunshine characters, where usually the male character is the grumpy one, and then the sunshine character is the female character. So I took that and then I switched it around. And so I made the grumpy character the female, and then the sunshine character the male. So I try to read the tropes and see what is selling, but I try to definitely put my own twist on it and put my own style on it. So it's not like everybody else's, and it's not kind of copying what's going on. When I was starting out to write, like I said before, I do kind of have a poetic tone when I write. And so I would message authors, and this is back in like 2013, I would message authors like for advice and, oh, how did you do this? And a lot of the authors were very nice and were like, oh, that's so great. Like, just to pursue you, and, you're going to find your tribe, But there are other authors out there who's like, that's never going to sell. That's not mainstream. You have to be mainstream if you're going to be successful. And so I kind of took that advice and I said, okay, well, I can do mainstream, but I'm going to do it my way. And by the way, I'm not a like top 100 on Amazon best-selling author or anything. I'm just, a very median author. But I do want to say that, like, it's very important to stick to your tone and your voice and what you have to say. But it's also very important to take what is a hot commodity, but make it your own. So also, I said in my themes, heartbreak is definitely always in there. Every character reacts differently to situations, and every character is going to have a unique response to being broken apart. Those are my favorite angles to write because I can share all these different perspectives and all these different kind of emotions and on so many different levels, because everyone is different and no one is the same. So I mainly write contemporary romance. I don't write any historical or anything like that. The only time I go out of, I guess, my romance genre is when I write young adult. Like my first series was a young adult romance, but I wouldn't even call it romance most of the time. But that's the only time I kind of go out of that. But other than that, I would say pick what suits you, pick what you're good at, pick what you know, what you like to read, what you want to read. I don't know if you guys know the author J.J. McAvoy, but she's one of the authors that made me fall in love with mafia romance. And I wrote her one day, and she wrote this really powerful female character. And I was like, how'd you come up with like the idea for her, like her personality? And she said, I wrote her as someone I wanted to read. And a lot of the time I think of that when I can't like find something to read, then I think, okay, well, I just need to write it then. Okay, so you have to have a lot of passion, especially if you want to write 10K or more a day. You can't get bored with your project. You have to keep it alive and keep it intimate to you. Make it important. What's the outcome going to be? You need to see that through, and you need to make it special, and you need to make it mean a lot. If you don't, then it's going to be really hard to get through a story, and you'll have to stop and keep starting on a different story again and again and again, and then nothing will get done. So like I said before, I don't plot at all. So I will jump from chapter to chapter, almost scene to scene, and I will just write what I'm in the mood for. If I'm having kind of a bad day or a sad day, I'll write a sad scene because I can invoke those emotions a lot better, and those feel a lot more authentic because I can describe it because I'm feeling it in that moment. You definitely have to be excited about what you're writing. You have to feel moved. If you get stuck somewhere, then don't waste any time and don't beat yourself up. If no words are coming, figure out what you can write and just do that. Head to the scene that is going to be to build the most tension, the biggest fight, where they fall in love, where they get back together. It can be anything. You just have to keep going, and you have to pick out those slots of time and emotions that are going to make the scene perfect. Oh, good. I say this all the time. I've said this quite a bit. Believe in your unique voice and accept your creativity. Let inspiration lead the way. There are a lot of, when I started out writing, I would say that I wanted, my mashup would be like Ellen Hopkins and Lemony Snicket. Like that's the authors I wanted to be. And that's a very wild and unique kind of a collaboration. But it's very important that you don't sound like everybody else. I know that there are lots of authors out there that you can probably be like, oh, everyone sounds the same because that's what sells, or everyone writes the same thing because that's what sells. But again, when you find that tribe, or when you find that group of readers, they're going to be so loyal to you that that's all that matters to you, is that it goes beyond telling like just a story, and you're sharing experiences with your friend group. Okay, take your notes. I have a notes app on my phone, but I also like to freehand that also. I do not outline. If I do any sort of outlining, I just list chapters 1 through 20, and as I write, I'll just put how many words per chapter. I also put every 5 chapters or every 4 chapters, however I break it up, I'll be like, oh, this needs to be like an intimate scene. Oh, this needs to be an emotional scene. And that's all I basically do as far as an outline. How I break it up, the 20 chapters is roughly around like 50 to 65,000 word novels. If you do around 2,500 to 3,000 words a chapter. So it just kind of, that's easier for me to break up if I'm checking my word count per chapter. I have lots of notes, and they're not in any order. I saw Colleen Hoover once post like a picture of this huge picture of her wall, and she had like 100 post-it notes, and they were all in order and organized. My desk is a mess, and I don't have any organization to anything. In my documents, I will just, at the bottom of my document, it will just have notes divided by asterisks, and that's basically it. My book, National Parks, I wrote that in 7 days. It's 73,000 word novel, and right now that one is probably my best-selling book. I started out with around 20,000 words in my notes. So in my notes, it was dialogue, research ideas, scenes and places. Every chapter is in a different national park. And so I kind of had to add that in somehow. But when I started writing, when I sat down to write it, I only had 20,000 words of notes to go off of. You need to have some sort of direction if you are a pantser. Is that what they're called? I don't know. A plotter? Okay. Yeah. You do have to have some sort of direction, and you have to have some ideas. You can't just sit, well, I guess you could sit down and then try to come up with something. But the more notes you have, the easier it is to sit down and say, oh, okay, well, I guess I could write that. Or you could write a different scene because you have another idea for that. It's just kind of easier to come up with things on the fly if you do have just kind of a small tidbit to go off of. Okay, oh yeah, good. I would say that using writing prompts will definitely help you increase your timer and your speed. I used to do a writing prompt in a Facebook group every day. They usually would have it like needs to be, under 100 words. And so I would see how quickly I could come up with an idea or how fast I could expand on that just to make it easier for when I was writing my own stories. These writing prompts, they're very simple, and they kind of will help your mind come up with more ideas along the way, especially if it's something instantaneous like that. And if you are writing every day, then it just promotes more inspiration along the way. Okay, back to taking the notes and everything. You need to prepare before you start tallying up word counts or jogging down, okay, what time it is. You make sure you sit down with a goal of what you are trying to write. And this can be your word count, like, oh, you want to write 2,000 words today. It can be that, but it also needs to be more of your ideas. Like, oh, I'm going to write a marriage scene today. If you go into writing with that kind of mindset, then you're going to allow your mind to focus on the scene and to really drive in on the intimate parts of that and to get really descriptive about everything that needs to happen before and after and during those scenes. So go over your ideas, gain inspiration, check out Pinterest, daydream a little bit, and get into the mood of creativity and inspiration before you do actually sit down. Do whatever you need to do to get those creative juices flowing. Dance around, listen to music, get into the mood.
So I'd like to open things up for a few questions, if we may.
Yeah.
And I think Hope had a question. Did you want to unmute yourself, Hope, or do you want me to read it out of, thank you. Okay.
I'll unmute. I just want to know, how long did it, I have two questions. How long did it take you from brainstorming your idea to when you finished your book? I mean, including like a first draft, editing, revising, publishing, marketing your book. And the second question is, what did I put the second question? Is do you use beta readers or do you use editors to help you with your books?
Okay. So every book is different. I would say with national parks, I wrote that in February sometime, and that release date was April 9th of last year. And so I'm able to turn it around pretty quickly. I have one or two beta readers, and then I do have an editor go through it too that says this doesn't make sense, or this scene doesn't work with there, or they're the ones that go through and kind of say, hey, the plot's not working here. And then I go back and I fix it. But I usually, I have a really close relationship with the beta readers because I have a friend that does a literary magazine. And so she's the one kind of helps me because she reads books pretty quickly. And so we can, I guess, do it in a short amount of time. So I do have a short turnaround usually.
Okay, and I think Emily had a question about some tips that she would like for creating emotional moments or storylines. Is that correct, Emily? You can unmute yourself and ask it yourself if you want. Okay, well, okay, there's a lawnmower there, so I will ask for you. So can you give us any tips for creating emotional moments or storylines?
Okay. So probably one of my favorite tropes to read is the same themes that I write. And so tips for creating emotional moments or storylines, I'd say you definitely need to read those kind of books. One of my favorite authors is Jay McLean, and she definitely writes that emotional side just with pure honesty. And there's a rawness to it. I would say another thing too, just to make it intimate, is that you can think about your own life. Like there's a lot of scenes in National Park that I took from my own life, but I changed it and exaggerated it to make it feel more like my character's experience instead of mine. I would say take your personal experiences, and it could be anything, and then just see how you felt with it, and then you can give it to your character and kind of deliver the experience to the story, but definitely make it into your story and not your own personal account. I mean, if you are writing your biography or memoir, but to make it more intimate in that way, just take personal things like personal experiences. I wrote a book called Wasted Words about this woman who got divorced. And I took a lot from my experience getting divorced and I wrote it into that book. And so one of my beta readers said it was just really intimate, like reading journal entries. So a lot of the time you just definitely need to take from what you've experienced and then just kind of share it in a different way.
Okay. Okay, we're running out of time here, but I do want to recap a couple things to make sure that I have it right. So the takeaways that I have are that you're constantly thinking and making notes. Maybe it will be this book or a different book. Don't necessarily know where it's going to be fit in, but you're making the notes of the thoughts that cross your mind. And it sounds to me as if some way or other you get them a little bit organized so that when you sit down, you have a general idea what you're going to be writing, and then you just write. So you don't worry about editing or what you think about it or anything. You just write. That whole editing thing is a different process that comes after the writing is done. And I presume that means after the first draft is done rather than anywhere in between. And that, just start out slow, maybe have a goal of what you would like to get up to on a particular day, depending on how you feel, how much time you have, set that goal, and then just write for a period of time, half hour later, or, if you're still inspired, just keep on writing. But other than that, take a look in about a half an hour and see how well you have done. So have I kind of wrapped that up pretty good?
Yes, absolutely. I just want to add one thing with my notes and everything.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of notes, and you're like, oh, I don't know where that's going to fit right now. It might not fit in this story, but it'll fit into another one. And another thing is everything's going to come together. Like you'll start writing your story and you're like, oh, I made that note. Let me add it here. Everything is going to come together. And it's a really beautiful process. But just believe that whatever you're inspired to say, it's going to come together and it's going to make the story better.
Okay, so my editor, I respect her writing very much, and she's very definitely a person who does not write linearly, the way I do. I start at page 1 and I go to page 200.
Yeah.
She will pick out scenes here, scenes there and there, and somehow she brings it together for a smooth flowing story. And I keep thinking to myself, I should probably be a little bit more like that, of just writing what comes easily and worry about tying them all together later. And I suppose, if you get a scene good, if you're just writing well and you're really into the scene, you're getting the scene, all of your scenes sooner or later come together, or there isn't that much to go back to bring them together.
Right. Another thing to think too is your job is to write. You're not the editor. Your job is just to write and come up with the creative concepts and to tell the story. So don't be worrying about, oh, maybe my grammar's off. Oh, maybe I used the wrong word there. That's not your job. Your job is to tell the story, the first draft, and then you can go from there. And then you can criticize it all you want. But the first job is always to write it.
Okay, that's great. Let me double check to see if we have any more questions here. I don't see any more questions. There's a lot of thank yous, and I do thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
So I guess we will call it a wrap, and I will have the replay available tomorrow. I will email it out, and I will also post on Facebook that the replay is available. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone.